Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon on our webinar on technical assistance opportunities to support local JRACs. Before we get started this afternoon, I have a couple of announcements for you. First, I'd like to remind you to please mute yourself and turn your cameras off. We will have an opportunity for you to submit questions to the chat feature, which will go directly to the host. And then we will have an opportunity to address those questions during the end of our program with a Q&A session. To the extent that there are questions or we don't have enough time to address all of the questions, we'll certainly reach out to those who submit them. And then after this webinar, in the event that you communicate with your team members and you have future questions or additional questions, we can work with you directly to get those questions answered. Captioning is available through our live streaming service on the website, which is listed on the slide that was running in the carousel. So if you need captions, please visit that. And then a recording of this video will also be placed on the local JRAC website until June the 30th to allow for any stakeholders who are not able to join us today to view the webinar. So thank you for that. And then with that, I would like to do some brief introductions to share with you who is going to be presenting during our webinar today. First, I'm Mary Kay Hudson. I'm the Executive Director for the Indiana Office of Court Services. I also serve as a state JRAC council member. Our office and the Office of Judicial Administration provides staff support to JRAC. So I work closely with both Justice Goffin as well as chair, as well as other staff members who support the council and its work groups. We also have Troy Hatfield joining us, who's Assistant Chief Probation Officer with Monroe County. He's also the Popeye President and a JRAC member. Chris Cunningham is the Director of Grant County Community Corrections. We have Adam McQueen, who's the Assistant Chief Probation Officer in Wayne County. Richard Stroker, who is with the Center for Effective Public Policy, and Denise Simden, who is Center for Effective Public Policy. You'll hear from each of those individuals throughout our webinar, and they'll have an opportunity to share a little bit more about their role with JRAC, as well as their perspective on the opportunities that we have up and coming for you this year. So the first thing I want to do is just provide a little bit of background on the Justice Reinvestment Advisory Council. My sense is that you are pretty well familiar with this, but we'll go through that briefly. April, if you want to go back, we'll run through the agenda. Sorry, thanks. So we'll run through the Justice Reinvestment Advisory Council from the state's perspective, as well as the local JRAC duties. I'm going to introduce to you, or allow them to introduce themselves, the Center for Effective Public Policy Technical Assistance Team. They are going to provide this group an overview of Indiana's evidence-based decision-making framework and Indiana's EBDM history, which will inform the technical assistance opportunities that are going to be available to local JRACs. Richard and Denise and their team will review the technical assistance options and the application process for TA. And then again, as I mentioned, we'll have a brief question and answer session at the end of our session. So please do submit any questions that you have in the chat. So first, I just want to do a brief overview of the state and local justice reinvestment advisory councils. I have a sense that you are familiar with these, but if you're new, the State Justice Reinvestment Advisory Council was adopted in 2015. Primarily, its original purpose was to oversee funds that were appropriated under House Enrolled Act 1006 to the Department of Correction to provide some community-based solutions for a certain level of offenders who are being kept in the community. And that was distributed through the DOC's Community Corrections grant process. And then also there was a significant amount of funding that was dedicated to the Division of Mental Health and Addiction that was distributed to local treatment providers through Recovery Works. So that was the original purpose of establishing JRAC. There were some other purposes and functions, but primarily that group was assigned to oversee the distribution and use of those funds. Since then, the statutes governing the State Justice Reinvestment Advisory Council have been expanded significantly, both in membership and duties. And I want to go over some of those duties with you today. First, we have reviewing and evaluating state and local criminal justice systems and corrections programs, pretrial services and probation services, et cetera. Need to move my thing so I can see. Reviewing the processes used by the Department of Correction in the Division of Mental Health and Addiction and awarding grants. So that was one of the original purposes. Reviewing and evaluating jail overcrowding to identify a range of possible solutions. Some of you may remember in 2019, the General Assembly adopted or enacted a statute that directed the jail overcrowding task force to study jail overcrowding issues. So by extension, JRAC is also responsible for putting some of those recommendations or considering some of those recommendations and working with local jurisdictions on jail overcrowding issues. JRAC is also responsible for coordinating with other criminal justice funding sources, such as the Indiana Criminal Justice Institute or the Division of Mental Health and Addiction on some of their funding that's coming through. The JRAC also establishes committees to inform the work of the Advisory Council, and we'll describe one of those work groups to you today and some of their work. Part of the reason that we're here today is that an essential function of the State Justice Reinvestment Advisory Council is to assist local JRACs in their work and some of their duties, and we'll talk a little bit about those duties in just a moment. And then there's the favorite catch-all of the state JRAC is able to perform other relevant duties as determined by the Advisory Council in the areas of justice reform, innovation, funding, and those types of things. So a local Justice Reinvestment Advisory Council, those were established in 2021, they have their own set of statutory duties and responsibilities. And again, the State Council is directed to support and provide assistance to local councils and to bridge or to create and bridge a line of communication between state policymakers, state agencies, as well as those who are working locally on their justice reform efforts. Local JRACs shall do the following, which is review, evaluate, and make recommendations for local criminal justice systems and correction programs, pretrial services, behavioral health, treatment and recovery services, community corrections, and county jail and probation services. They are also assigned to promote state and local collaboration between the State Advisory Council and the local or regional advisory council. They are to review and evaluate local jail overcrowding and recommend a range of possible overcrowding solutions, compile reports regarding local criminal sentencing as directed by the Advisory Council, which is the State Council. Local JRACs can establish committees to inform the work of the local or regional council. They can communicate with the State Council to establish and implement best practices and ensure consistent collection and reporting of data as requested by the State Council. And then they prepare and submit an annual report to the Advisory Council not later than March 31st of this year. So you can see that there's some parallels between the state work and the local work. And as the State Council was talking about how we can support local JRACs, we thought it very important to create a mechanism to have some deliberate discussions where members of the State Council can work with local representatives who are also either members of the State Justice Reinvestment Advisory Council or who participated in discussions via our work group process to figure out how can we provide training, technical assistance, funding, other sources of support to locals as you begin the process of forming your your local Justice Reinvestment Advisory Councils. This statute has been in effect since 2021, but we also know that many counties are still getting started or in the very early stages of developing their local councils, and we want to be able to provide assistance to you as you are doing so. We also know that there's some counties who are in more advanced stages of local collaboration around justice reform efforts, and we want to provide support to those counties as well, and then every county in between. So the State Council last year formed what we call the local JRAC work group. Justice Goff serves as the chair of that work group. And again, it was really formed to design ways to establish state and local connections between the State Council and the local council and support JRACs. We have several members of this local JRAC work group who are also members of the State Council. And as that work group was talking about how can we work with the Center for Effective Public Policy to really craft some technical assistance opportunities and options that would be responsive to the needs of the locals, we identified a need to create even a smaller work group to really begin to discuss some of those issues and develop some options. So we created a subgroup of the local JRAC work group, which consists of Troy Hatfield, Chris Cunningham, Adam McLean, Liz Darledge from the Department of Correction, Community Corrections Division, Office of Court Services staff, and the Center for Effective Public Policy staff. So on this call, we do have Troy, Chris, and Adam, who are interested in sharing with you a little bit about their perspective in working with the State Council to determine how we can best provide support to those local councils. So Troy, Chris, and Adam, I'm going to call on you to make any statements that you like about your experience working with JRAC and the local JRAC work group, starting with maybe Troy.
Thank you, Mary Kate. I just wanted to say that we know and recognize that implementing all of the duties of a local JRAC is not easy. In fact, I mean, it's pretty hard, right? And which is one of the reasons why this technical assistance is being offered, that the state JRAC can help and provide some assistance to the locals. And the other thing that kind of note is the planning team that kind of worked through these options. You had some local voices on there with myself and Adam and Chris to help get a guide and help designing this TA that will be provided, or that is potentially going to be provided to many of you, hopefully. And the other thing is the application you're going to find is pretty simple. We wanted to keep it pretty simple and easy to encourage everybody to apply. So please reach out for the TA that's there. And then the last thing that I'd like to say is it's really important to continue to hear from you. Please get in contact with us if you're having problems, if you're having struggles, or with ideas on how we can better assist you, so that we, representing the locals, can bring this to our subgroup, to our work group, and then ultimately to the state JRAC to provide some more input and feedback about what your needs are. But Adam, what about your perspective?
Thank you, Troy. I don't know that I could have said it better than what you just did, but what I would add is that I feel as though my experience with the technical assistance thus far, it is built and is still being built in a way that recognizes that different JRACs are going to be entering in at different points. Again, as Troy alluded, very much the local perspective was very much kept at the forefront when this was being developed. And just to give an example of that, with my own county, my role with Wayne County's local JRAC, I'm the co-chair and the point of contact for Wayne County. Our experience is, I recognized very early on that we there were lots of developmental activities that our group probably needed to complete in order to become a high functioning group. But I also had to weigh that with some change targets that our group had identified that we want to, so that was probably our struggle early on, and something that we're still working through, that is, where do we focus our attention on those developmental activities, things like developing a system map, establishing performance measures, or do we focus our attention on those change targets? And so that's, for lack of a better word, how I intend to use TA when it's made available. So Chris, anything to add?
Well, thanks, Troy and Adam. I guess the things that I would say, first of all, is welcome to the adventure, because the benefits that you will receive from TA, you'll find extremely helpful and beneficial for you, as a county, from data, from just the different things that you'll work on. And our opportunity for the three of us to be able to participate in the larger JRAC work group for you is an opportunity to be able to communicate any of your cares, your worries, and concerns. This effort is a lot like evidence-based practices. You're never done. You're always moving, moving forward. Sometimes it's a step back, but then it's 2 steps forward. So don't be overwhelmed by that, because that's easy to happen. But you'll work through those things. And just like eating an elephant, one bite at a time, and you will find success in doing that. You're going to get excellent opportunities through the technical assistance to be able to grow. And I know I speak for the three of us, is that if we can help you in any way, if you have questions, since we're in the journey with you, we'll have an opportunity to be able to share some of our insights and hopefully be able to connect you in ways that, enhance your performance. So again, welcome to the adventure.
Thank you, Troy and Chris and Adam. I appreciate that. And then I will also mention, as the Center for Effective Public Policy goes through Indiana's history with the evidence-based decision-making initiative, I want to emphasize that the State Council also has its own duties and responsibility and work that go well beyond just providing support to local JRACs or ensuring or assisting you in achieving your goals and fulfilling your duties and responsibilities in other statutes. State JRAC has a significant increase in their responsibilities over the last couple of years, and our State Council is going to be going through a similar process as the locals, with working with CEPP to look at the evidence-based decision-making initiative efforts that we have been through over the last number of years. Like everything else and like everyone else, we took a little bit of pause because of COVID. We had some additional changes in statutes. We brought on local JRACs, but I think the State Council is now in a position and ready to bring back our focus to the evidence-based decision-making initiative, look at what we can do as state partners to create opportunities, policies, funding that supports your work at the local level. So that's going to be part of our adventure, as Chris says, in the next probably 1 to 5 years and beyond, is looking at what we can do to improve our communication and collaboration as state partners, and then also what we do with you all at the local level. So I am going to turn this over to Richard and his team from the Center for Effective Public Policy to provide you, first to introduce you to his staff, as well as to provide you a little bit of an overview of Indiana's evidence-based decision-making initiative and what it means to be part of an evidence-based decision-making collaborative team at the state or the local level. And then they will review the technical assistance options that are available to you, and then a little bit about the application process. So Richard, thank you to you and your team for being here, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mary Kay. It's a pleasure to be here today and to interact with you about this exciting technical assistance opportunity. I'm Richard Stroker. I'm the Director of the Center for Effective Public Policy, and I'll be leading this effort on our behalf. The Center for Effective Public Policy is a private nonprofit criminal justice training and technical assistance organization headquartered in Kensington, Maryland. And we have been working on EBDM related and especially topics and projects related to the core elements of EBDM for a long time. We were there at the beginning of EBDM work, and we continue to be involved in EBDM work across the country. A little bit about myself. I've worked in this field for a very long time, worked for 25 years for state government in South Carolina, and had the chance to work on these kinds of issues and topics with jurisdictions around the country. And I look forward to working with you all. I've had the chance to do a little work in Indiana on some projects related to community supervision and transition and reentry, and I look forward to this project getting started. Helping me and helping to lead this effort will be Denise Simden. Denise is a senior manager with the Center for Effective Public Policy, and you'll be hearing from Denise in just a minute. Denise has been with the CEPP now for several years, formerly working as an administrator for the Wisconsin Department of Corrections over their Community Corrections Division, and also served as an assistant administrator over their adult institutional division. Denise is extremely knowledgeable about EBDM work and is currently doing some work with Lake County in Indiana around JRAC discussions. So you'll hear from Denise in just a minute. Also joining us is a person who may be familiar to many of you, Lakeisha Fisher. Lakeisha joined us recently after serving for many years as the pretrial release coordinator in Grant County. Of course, Grant County has a long history in conducting and undertaking EBDM work and doing JRAC work, and we're delighted to have Lakeisha joining us on this project. She's also been involved in Indiana's state pretrial committee and brings a wealth of experience and knowledge about both the topics we'll be exploring and about the Hoosier State. So we're glad to have Lakeisha joining us. The three of us will be the individuals who will be primarily providing the technical assistance that will be offered under the project, but we might be expanding that to others. Let's go to the next slide. I wanted to mention Allison Shames. Allison is also a director at the Center for Effective Public Policy, and Allison is overseeing a really interesting aspect of this project, which has to do with creating a JRAC workspace, which will be an online learning platform. And that effort, I think, will prove to be of great value to some jurisdictions. It's a method for providing some comprehensive learning modules and practical steps, examples and videos to guide local JRAC teams as they do their work. And we'll talk a little bit more about the JRAC workspace in just a little bit. Also, Sam Steed. Sam is an operations assistant, and he's been helpful with our advancing pretrial policy and research project, providing support to that effort. And he is joining us to help with logistical and technical issues. And lastly, Jenna Mackey. Jenna, another individual that we recruited who was able to do some work in Indiana, worked for the Indiana Department of Corrections for some time, focused on evidence-based case management and continuous quality improvement, as well as working at the University of Cincinnati with their Corrections Institute and on their EPICS program. Jenna has also been instrumental in helping us design some of the language and content of the JRAC workspace. And Jenna will be providing some technical assistance to jurisdictions that might be participating in the project through the workspace. So those are the folks from CEPP that will be primarily involved in providing assistance and working on this project. And I know that we have an extremely talented team that will be doing its very best to provide important assistance to jurisdictions. And at the heart of this work, I think you'll find, and most of you already know, that it's largely about building collaboration, that it's largely about effectively using and understanding data and applying the important research and information associated with evidence-based practices with the goal of identifying a desired direction, identifying outcomes that you seek, and we will be working with you to help you achieve those outcomes. I'm going to turn it over to Denise now, and Denise is going to talk a little bit more about evidence-based decision-making and some of the experience in Indiana.
Thanks, Richard. So as Richard mentioned, I had the good fortune of working in the Wisconsin Department of Corrections prior to coming to the center. And in that role, I also was involved in the EBDM work with the Center for Effective Public Policy and the National Institute of Corrections in that role, and was part of their state team. And for many of you, this information is probably not new. It's information that you've heard previously, because Indiana's been really at the forefront of a lot of this work from the time EBDM really started with the National Institute of Corrections in 2010. So originally starting out with several local sites, NIC saw the value in working with the local sites and took that concept, took the work of EBDM, and then expanded this out to various state teams, one of which was, of course, Indiana. Goal of EBDM has been to build, and Richard kind of has talked a little bit about this, but the EBDM was really intended to build a system of research-informed and best practices from this point of early onset of engagement in the criminal justice system, from that law enforcement point of contact, typically through discharge in the criminal justice system. So really looking at the whole, the system as a whole. And rather than operating independently, one of the goals of EBDM is to strive to bring agencies, all of your different stakeholder agencies together, to work collaboratively toward having a shared vision of what that change looks like. And what I think Chris might have mentioned, having change targets and working on some change targets. Those are really an important element of the EBDM work, identifying change targets and areas for system improvement. Next slide. So as I also mentioned, Indiana has really been at the forefront of the work with EBDM. You have had 7 local sites who have been engaged in the EBDM work since early on, expanded from those sites into your state team. And so I think we're really excited to see where this work can go. And I have to say, having worked in Wisconsin, was always paying attention to the work that was being done within the Indiana. And that from the strategic planning that you worked on early on to many of the initiatives that came from this work that you did. So Chris, I know you had some comments earlier that you made. Is there anything that you would just like to talk about in terms of your experience being part of your local team within Grant County?
Thanks, Denise. I guess some of the local things that I can remember are the great benefits of collaboration and things that we worked on. Things like, and I keep going back to the technical assistance because the technical assistance is what allowed us to do many of the things that we wanted to do. So we had the benefit of Mimi Carter and Mark Carey and Tammy Meredith and Phyllis Moodley and a bunch of hands that helped us do a lot of different initiatives. And so for Grant County, this adventure began in 2010 as sort of a learning lab for how do we do all this. And so I was excited to be a part of it. It was very much a team effort under the leadership of Sidney McCoy and Judge Mark Spitzer. And so I was happy to come along and be able to help, where I could. But it is something that if you get a chance to read the Indiana story, it's really exciting to watch it start from the local level and work its way up to this state initiative of everyone working together with a common goal of collaboration. So those are the things that I think will feed in so much to the rest of what you're going to hear today.
Thanks, Chris. And I think you really highlight too the importance of that relationship between the local and the state teams. And I think as more local teams become involved, you'll find that there are a lot of problems and issues you can solve at the local level, but sometimes you need some extra support and help out from the state team. And that really is one of the important pieces of EBDM is having that connection between advancements that are done at the local level and incorporating the state team where you need to. So finally, the 4 guiding principles. This is really the foundation, I think, of what evidence-based decision-making was founded on and ought to be something that is considered and discussed through your local JRAC teams. So 4 guiding principles. Number 1 is the professional judgment of criminal justice system decision makers is enhanced when informed by evidence-based knowledge. So I think we would all agree that professional judgment is an essential part of what we do. But that professional judgment is really better and better informed when we combine that with some evidence-based information. Number 2, every interaction with the criminal justice system offers an opportunity to contribute to harm reduction. Harm reduction obviously is a goal of EBDM as well. And I think this is just an important element for everybody who's involved in the criminal justice system, not just a prosecutor, defense attorney, or a judge or probation, but really everybody who engages in the work that we do. Number 3, systems achieve better outcomes when they operate collaboratively at the individual agency and system levels. I think you're going to hear this a lot as we talk through EBDM and your JRAC work. It's about bringing your individual agency experience together to work collaboratively on problem solving, to work through the barriers that one individual agency might have on their own, but collaboratively, you can work through those barriers to achieve your vision and your goals. And the 4th thing, Richard also mentioned this, is really the criminal justice system. We should be continual learners like other professions are and improve when professionals make decisions based on the collection, analysis, and use of data and information. So using data and research to inform how you improve your system operations. As I mentioned, I think these are just some guiding principles that will be part of the ongoing discussions that you have within your JRAC teams. So I'll turn it back over to Richard and he can talk through some of the TA's information specifically.
Sorry.
So one of our objectives is to offer technical assistance to jurisdictions in a variety of ways, and we've come up with some different methods that can be used in order to do that. Next slide. Primarily, we're offering up some intensive technical assistance, which will be offered to 4 sites. And through that technical assistance, you will have a TA provider that will be working with you monthly and making several site visits to your jurisdiction to help you work through the various phases of EBDM work and the various aspects of your local JRAC efforts. The TA we expect will last for 1 year, and sites will receive remote assistance as well as on-site assistance. Next slide. The JRAC workspace, which I've mentioned earlier, will be using an online learning platform to help jurisdictions understand and apply lessons from EBDM and to move forward with their JRAC work. Sites will receive some limited remote and in-person access so that they can make progress with their efforts by using this innovative approach.
Hi there, this is Mary Kay. I think we have some technical difficulties with Richard's connection. So I'm going to just pick up where he left off. We're looking at providing some technical assistance for around 4 counties to become pilot sites for the JRAC workspace. This is an online module that will include some videos and learning guides, again, as Richard said, to guide you through the EBDM process. It will include a technical assistance provider assigned to the site who will work very closely with local leadership, the local JRAC chair and that point of contact or any coordinator that may have been named by the local JRAC. So there'll be routine communication between those individuals and then in-person TA visits 1 to 2 times per year. And as we said, we're looking for up to 4 sites to be selected for that process. And then as we have previously and up to this point, we have had available what we refer to sort of generically as ad hoc technical assistance or on-demand technical assistance. This is available through a link that is posted on the local JRAC webpage, where a county can submit an online form indicating an interest with assistance on any particular area surrounding their local JRAC work. That could be with building a collaborative team. It could be with mapping their local system. It could be training on evidence-based practices or risk assessments, any number of different things. There's a very long list of suggestions that counties can select from if they're looking for some on-demand or ad hoc TA. But then there's also an opportunity for a local jurisdiction to come up with something maybe that's a little bit unique to their county for which they'd like to receive assistance. Once a county fills out that online form, they can expect to receive a phone call or email correspondence from one of the TA providers within a couple of days, just to check in with that county, that jurisdiction, to learn a little bit more about the topic for which they're seeking assistance, and then to identify ways in which they can provide that support to the local jurisdiction. We don't have there's not really a limitation or any set number of counties that can receive this ad hoc TA. It's going to be really based upon the demand that we have at the local level relative to the resources that we have under our current contract. But to the extent that we have a significant amount of demand for any of these different TA opportunities, whether that be the intensive site work, Richard first described, the online platform, or the ad hoc TA. If we receive more requests than our current contract can support, the Office of Judicial Administration will work to identify ways in which we can increase that contract with CEPP. So our goal is to provide all the support that you need in fulfilling your duties as local JRACs, and we're going to do that the best way that we can. So we do have the application process. I think Chris maybe mentioned that the application process was really easy. It is an online process that you have a link that you would have received in your announcement for the technical assistance opportunity. That information was sent to all local JRAC chairs and points of contact and will also be available on our webpage. The online application is due on June the 30th. Due to our limited resources, the awards for the online platform and the intensive technical assistance will be awarded on what we can only refer to as a competitive basis, just because we anticipate that we may have more interest in our ability to provide TA resources under those two forms, at least for the moment. But what that doesn't mean is that counties who apply for that technical assistance have to have it all figured out. They don't have to have a highly functioning or a perfectly functioning local JRAC. What we're really looking for is a willingness and an ability to commit to really engage with the local technical assistance providers and work toward that goal of achieving a local collaborative using the evidence-based decision-making framework. Once we receive the applications for technical assistance, the Office of Judicial Administration will review them, will provide information and context for those applications to the local JRAC work group, and then ultimately the State Council will review the applications for technical assistance and make those awards. We anticipate that award decisions for those TA opportunities under the intensive TA and the online platform TA will be made on or about August the 1st. Certainly, if we receive a significant number of applications, if we are trying to figure out ways in which we can provide some additional support, it may take a little bit longer for us to do that. But our goal is to have those decisions made and counties notified by August the 1st. In terms of when the TA will actually commence, that if for those counties that were selected to be in the intensive sites or on the local JRAC platform, we would imagine working with those counties to identify a timeline, a mutually agreeable timeline for when we might be able to begin working with them. One thing I will note about the online workspace is that the sites that are selected to participate in that, we are really going to be asking for counties to be willing to serve as pilots. And what we mean by pilot is the online workspace is something new that CEPP is creating for Indiana to help develop local JRACs using the EBDM framework, but it is very early in its development. And so the counties that are going to be receiving technical assistance using that platform are going to be the first to use it. And so one of the things that we're going to be asking of those counties is to provide input and feedback on how we can improve that experience for counties moving forward. So just know that as you're applying for that, we know that we're customizing it to be unique to Indiana, to meet your needs under the requirements for the local JRAC statutes. But we recognize that there may be some areas that we may want to improve in the future, and we'd like your assistance in doing so. And then again, for the ad hoc TA is not part of a competitive process. The only thing that we would ask for counties who are interested in pursuing ad hoc TA is that they give us a clear description of how we can be helpful. And then to the degree that the technical assistance requires participation for all of your local JRAC members, we would ask for their commitment in doing so. We will accept applications for the ad hoc TA on a rolling basis, meaning the June 30th application deadline does not apply to you. You can apply for it tomorrow, you can apply for it in September, or you can apply for it in November, whatever works best with your community's needs. And as I mentioned, CEPP will contact anyone who submits an application for ad hoc TA within 10 days, and then we will fulfill those requests as our resources permit. Our current contract with CEPP goes through December 31st of 2023. We do anticipate continuing that contract back into 2024. So our goal is to be able to provide some continuity and technical assistance services and support to counties, for an indefinite period of time. To address on all the applications, you must submit a letter from your local JRAC chair and vice chair that describes your local JRAC's willingness to participate in all the required activities. When we're talking about all the required activities, obviously that means a little bit more for a site that's applying for the intensive technical assistance than it does for an ad hoc site. So as you are considering applying for these opportunities at the local level, it's just really important that you talk to all of your local JRAC members so that they have an understanding of what the expectation is. Again, we are not looking for counties who have it all figured out. We are looking for counties who have some challenges, who need some guidance, who need some support, who are looking for some ideas about how they can work with their local community members to improve things within their communities. We do encourage you to submit letters of support from all of your JRAC members who are willing to do so. That does help demonstrate the level of commitment on their part as the application process, but it's not required. And then all applications must be submitted through the online application process and link that's posted on the JRAC website. So items for you to address in your application are your reasons for applying, how this opportunity can assist you in implementing EBDM principles or fulfilling your duties as local JRACs, what any benefits that you anticipate receiving or outcomes that you expect to achieve through participating in the technical assistance, how your local leadership will be engaged through this work to ensure that the benefits are achieved and sustained through the TA period. And then any other relevant information that you think is important for state JRAC to consider in making the award decisions. The local JRAC work group will, or excuse me, the JRAC and the local JRAC work group will be referencing your annual reports that you have been submitting for the last 2 years. So you do not need to resend this information unless there's a component of that annual report that you think is particularly important in support of your application, or that you want to use as a reference for why you think your jurisdiction really needs or could benefit from technical assistance. You do not need to resubmit that information. You can merely reference it for us. So again, we are hopeful that we are able to provide as much TA and support to all the counties as possible. And to the degree that our demand or the applications for technical assistance outnumber the current spots available for each of those forums, we will be looking for ways to expand the opportunities over the coming year or so. So I do think that we do have a little bit of time left, just a few minutes for any Q&A. Jenny, Michelle, did we receive any questions in the chat?
Not yet, Mary Kay.
Okay. If you don't have if you have a question and you don't have an opportunity to type it in because you need to run to another meeting, please don't hesitate to reach out to any member of the Office of Court Services staff. That can be me, Jenny, Michelle, April, David. We're happy to field those questions, get them to the right person. If it's a CEPP question, we're happy to send that to them, provide you information. We hope that you will consider applying for technical assistance. If you are in a position where your county is just not sure and you want to have a call with any member of our team here at Court Services or another member of the local JRAC or state JRAC work group or CEPP or any and all of those to determine if applying for technical assistance right now is right for you, we're happy to have that discussion as well.
Likewise, Mary Kay, I would say if anybody has any questions regarding the JRAC workspace, they can certainly reach out to myself or Richard as well, and we'll field those within CEPP.
It looks like we did receive one question. I don't have access to those. Jenny or Michelle, can you read them?
Mary Kay, we're not seeing anything in the chat.
So I can see there's two questions. One was, how soon will this video be uploaded for review from other local JRAC board members? And then the other question was, can we get copies of the slides?
So April, if you can answer the question about the posting and the slides.
Yep, so the posting of the slides will hopefully occur by the end of the week and will stay up on the local JRAC website until the application deadline of June 30th. And it appears as though the participants have the ability to send chat to all of the co-hosts, so we're all getting a few different questions. Mary Kay, one of the questions that I received is, if we apply for intensive but are not approved, would we still be considered for the lesser TA?
Yes, so if a county applies for technical assistance and we think that the opportunity for which they applied is not quite the right fit, we would definitely reach out to that county to provide them some different options.
Now I'm seeing them.
Especially if we receive an
was-
overwhelming demand for the technical assistance on the intensive side. And if we're trying to regroup to determine whether or not we can work with CEPP to provide more intensive availability, we might, as an interim step, refer a jurisdiction to some of those ad hoc TA opportunities to kind of keep them moving, keep them going until we're able to offer them either more intensive TA or on the online platform. Our goal is to fulfill all the requests, just to be clear. So we want to make this as accessible to you all as possible. And to the degree that anything that you're seeing isn't quite meeting your needs, or you're just wondering as to whether or not it will be useful for you, please reach out to us and we're happy to have a conversation about that, because we want to meet you where you are and be as supportive to you all as possible.
Mary Kay, I received an additional question. How is CEPP defining harm reduction?
Harm reduction that's actually a term that is included in the National Institute of Corrections materials on the evidence-based decision-making initiative. We look at it as a more generic term, reducing harm more globally and generally to the community, to individuals who are victims, to the individuals who are actually recipients or consumers of the criminal justice system. We are not focused on any particular harm reduction model, if that's the question. So again, reducing harm is more of a generic term of let's make things better. And you can interpret harm to a jurisdiction, a community, to an individual in many different ways, whether that's financial harm, spiritual harm, physical harm, all sorts of things. That's not particularly a focal point of the technical assistance, because as counties are working with CEPP and developing their own strategies, counties themselves are defining what is important to them, what outcomes they want to achieve, how they would interpret reducing harm or reducing negative impact on their community.
I think also when we talk about applying research and applying evidence-based practices, those are all efforts toward harm reduction. So not trying to, not ignoring what the research says can sometimes unintentionally do more harm. And so really focusing on, what are those best practices that research has really supported in our field for many, many years. And so focusing on how we can incorporate them into the work that we do.
Are there any other questions? Okay, well, thank you for your time. Again, the information, the link to the videos, the slides we post on the JRAC website, the local JRAC website, as well as the application. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions, and we look forward to receiving your application. Thank you all.
Thank you.